Hi, this is Jenny Langley, author of the new Maudsley Training Manual. In this video, we're looking at exercise 5.3 from module 5, which is all about the reassurance trap and the concept of rolling with resistance. So module 5 is very much follow on from the basic communication skills that were introduced in module 4. So the reassurance trap is depicted in this graphic. And it looks a bit like a roller coaster, doesn't it? So recovery is very much like a roller coaster. But what happens is when carers constantly reassure their loved ones, so it might be, are you going to make me fat? No, I'm not going to make you fat. Is there oil in this? No, there's not oil in this. How many calories in a spring onion? You know, that sort of thing. And it goes on and on and on, doesn't it? So what happens is every time the carer gives reassurance, you get the immediate instant soothing effect, but then it doesn't last so long. So each time it lasts a little bit less. And so what happens is that the loved one's anxiety just gradually starts to get higher and higher and higher. So the soothing effect of the reassurance gets less each time. And then if it's working, then, so lots of carers will say, but it's really working. So it's like, okay, well, if it's working, carry on doing it. But at some stage you might find that actually you're feeling that you're caught in a trap of having to continually give this reassurance and it's not really getting you anywhere. So at that stage, it might be worth thinking, how as a carer can I sidestep that reassurance trap? Imagine the concept of controlled crying with a baby. So this is just an example. So if when you have a baby, the baby cries, and as soon as you pick the baby up, the baby stops crying, which is magic, isn't it? But then as time goes on, you end up holding the baby all the time because the baby wants to be held and say, well, just cry, and you're holding it and you can't get any sleep. So Professor Tanner Byron will say, what you need to do is control crying. So the baby is clean, the baby is fed, the nursery is gorgeous, everything's set for the baby to be able to sleep in its nursery without you having to pick it up the whole time. But when you put the baby down, you're obviously feeling, as a carer, you're feeling really, really anxious because things might go wrong, might make it worse. The baby is really confused because why aren't I being picked up? I'm always being picked up. So the baby will scream and scream and scream. The carer is standing outside the bedroom door feeling terrible. And then what typically happens, doesn't always work, of course, but what typically happens is that the baby will eventually learn to self-soothe. So maybe the first night the baby cries for 3 hours, it's horrific, everyone's exhausted, the baby falls asleep with exhaustion, the mum or the dad probably doesn't sleep because they're so worried about the detrimental effect this might be having on the baby. But if it works, after a few weeks, the baby might have learned to self-soothe. So there's been lots of research behind this. So initially, the carer's anxiety spikes and the sufferer's anxiety spikes if you step aside from the reassurance track, but then gradually that level of anxiety comes right the way back down to a more normal level. So the sufferer learns to self-soothe. Okay, so looking at the exercises that we do in the workshops. So the first question is, how do you respond at the moment if your loved one seeks reassurance about food, weight and shape? So possible answers might be, well, I give her reassurance about how much oil I've put in the food because if I don't, she might not eat it. I might even tell a white lie. Or sometimes, I might tell a white lie when she asks me if I think she has put on weight. She's so sensitive and scared of getting fat, which is clearly a huge fear for someone with an eating disorder. Or he asks me over and over if he's worked hard enough. If I don't reassure him, I worry he would stay up studying all night. So, and then obviously be exhausted and not eat and etc, etc. And he gets really upset if we don't notice how much he's eaten. It's almost like he needs our permission to stick to his meal plan. So these are all genuine fears, aren't they? So remember the saying, every caring behaviour has a positive intention. So what is the positive intention as a carer if you give reassurance? Well, the first thing is it helps keep the peace. The second thing, you're soothing the sufferer in the short term. And the third thing, you're worried as a carer, how might my loved one respond if I don't give the reassurance she's come to expect? Will I make things worse? So these are genuine fears, aren't they? But we know over time that with all our experience, that many families find that actually if they can sidestep the reassurance trap, it really helps the whole family to move on. Okay, how could you respond in a way that might help the sufferer to self-soothe? So possible answers might be something like, I could try changing the subject or distracting her with something else, but I think she might accuse me of not understanding and not caring. So carers might genuinely say, well, I can see a benefit, but I can also see a real big possible disadvantage. Or I could ignore his request, but I'm worried that would make him mad. And then if he's mad, he won't eat anything. So that's, again, a genuine fear. And of course, we have to acknowledge that for sufferers, it's hard to make changes, but also for carers, it's really hard to make changes. And things can sometimes feel worse before they get better, like with the control crying with the baby. But we always think about, okay, is it worth the risk? What's the worst thing that could happen? If I don't give reassurance, you know, there might be a huge outburst, but then it might work. So is it worth taking that risk? Useful phrases to roll with resistance when the loved one is continually seeking assurance might be, you know the answer to that question, it's not helpful for me to keep reassuring you. Or, I read that if I reassure you, so you're consulting the higher authority, I read that if I reassure you, I'll lock you further into your eating disorder thoughts and keep your fear flourishing. Or, I've already answered that question, try and remember the answer. Or, that is your eating disorder speaking to you, it sounds like you're afraid. So in the last couple, we've kind of externalized the illness, haven't we? We said it's the eating disorder voice in your head. Or we've already agreed that I can't answer that. So you might have, when you were doing meal planning, for example, said, what we're not going to do anymore is talk about food, weight and shape at the table. Or again, externalizing the illness, that sounds like your eating disorder talking, what do you want to say back to it? Or you could attend to the emotion. Remember the ALVs that we did in module 4? I know you're feeling anxious and I trust you to figure this one out. So by using phrases like this, you can sidestep the urge that the loved one is having to constantly get that reassurance from you, but it takes courage. Okay, what could you see if your loved one is becoming more upset or even more argumentative? Carers often say, when we look at this question in the workshops, carers often say, but that's my fear. My loved one will be even more upset if I don't give her reassurance, and then she won't eat so much, and she's very likely to break something. I've realised that when she's so upset, I just need to walk away and give her some space. Now, when you're charged with feeding your child, so if you're doing family-based therapy approach with child and adolescent mental health service, for example, it might be that you do reassure your loved one just to get them through that phase 1 because they've got to eat, you know, enough food to start putting on weight. It's really scary, and maybe you need to reassure them as they go through that phase. But then when they go into phase 2 of FBT and certainly phase 3, that's the time to think about stepping back from that constant reassurance. Okay, so useful phrases here might be, I can see you're upset, I know this is really difficult. So the empathy, the acknowledging the challenges of change. Let's not get into an argument, that never helps. A hug might be better. So again, that's kind of the attending to the emotions and the validating and soothing that we've done before. I need to take some time out. We're both feeling angry. So the carer might own their own emotions. Yeah, this is making me get wound up too. When we're both wound up, we can't talk properly. I want to be able to properly listen to what you're saying. So let's come back to this later on. So that's really sidestepping and rolling with resistance. Or the crap sandwich. I love you unconditionally. Your eating disorder is really strong right now, and I don't want to get drawn into an argument about food, weight and shape. I'm going to take some time out so we don't hurt each other in the heat of the moment. We can talk more later. So basically saying we've both got wound up with the heat of the emotion because of the eating disorder, and let's just take a break to try and calm things down. So when things have calmed down, the carer might say, I'm sorry I raised my voice earlier, so you can reflect back. Or, I got caught up with your eating disorder voice earlier, and I'm sorry, what I meant to say was, and then acknowledging the challenges of sticking with the meal plan, the empathy, the unconditional love, the calm, compassionate approach that we're trying to achieve. Okay, so by using these sorts of phrases, you can sidestep that constant need that the sufferer might have to get your reassurance around food, weight and shape, but you're also expressing empathy. And over time, gradually, the sufferer will learn that they can self-soothe, and they'll also learn that you trust them, that they can take their own responsibility and they can start to cope with the challenges ahead in, you know, the latter stages of recovery. There can be significant advantages from stepping out of the reassurance trap, and sufferers quite often say, actually, it was quite a relief when my parents started to step back and let me take that responsibility. It was hard, but it was quite a relief when they did that. So thank you for watching this video. I hope you found it helpful. All of the worksheets and videos can be found at www.newmaudsleykens-kent.co.uk. Thank you.